Z, a creator economy podcast. ZFi and myself, Zombie Shepherd, are bringing this to you in conjunction with the AV Guild of Bankless DAO. And today is our final episode in this particular series, where we're going to be going over the entire series, doing a recap and a little bit of a retro on what we learned ourselves from this series. So, how you doing, ZFi?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited to be wrapping up this series and ready to get on to the next one. So,
me too. Really looking forward to that Moloch series. It's gonna be a fun one to make.
Yep, and of course, I know we're always doing creator economy stuff anyway with Zombie Time and just being involved in this stuff. Like with anything we're doing with AV Guild and Bankless DAO, it's always about new tools that creators are able to use to tap into. And I know we'll be doing this kind of series again, but it's not going to be the 101 course that we just did. It's going to be the deep dive into what we're really doing out here. So, cool. You want to kick us off with this recap?
Sure. Sorry, I'm trying to do my Google Lights here. As is good practice in this space, in just Web3 and in DAO space in general, we wanted to do a little bit of building in public here. So we can start let's start with the most recent episode. We'll work our way back to the first one, and then we can tie that into the retrospective.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So first off, thank you to everybody who's followed us so far, engaged with our content, and been there to support us through this project, including the AV Guild and Bankless DAO. It's like you said, we learned a lot of stuff. It's been a great experience. And for anybody who hasn't caught all of our episodes, you can catch up on LensTube and soon the DAO YouTube as well. So always remember that if you're going to collect these episodes, that collect fee supports us, Bankless DAO, and LensTube for hosting these videos for us. But anyway, we'll get right into that. We'll get right into the recap. So our most recent episode, the last one that aired, was the Web3 paradox. And this is where we kind of touched on, if we want to get people into Web3, we're going to have to start with Web2 tools, Web2 platforms, and all the Web2 rails that exist. That's where you're going to get the attention, and then you redirect it. We know you're familiar with a lot of these things already and how these tools can offer greater sovereignty and greater control over your assets. But the paradox that we came to was, we're going to need Web2 to get to Web3.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, where are you watching this right now? You're probably watching it on YouTube or maybe Twitter. We're doing it in Restream, which is also a centralized service, that we don't get any benefit from. We just pay a subscription fee to use the tools. So yeah, that is kind of the paradox, is being stuck in this middle position of needing all of these tools that extract from creators in order to get the word out about all the tools that enable creators.
Right. Indeed. So it's a little kind of it's a weird catch-22 situation, but I think we're moving the right direction. So I think we've covered that pretty well. The episode before that was about ethics and regulation. It was a little bit of a spicier episode. We discussed how regulation kind of comes out of a lack of personal ethics. The reason that we are calling for regulation in a lot of these places is because centralized institutions, TradFi, whatever, like all this same type of normal greed that persists through other systems has also made it to crypto.
Yep. We've had, last year we had the Sam Bankman-Fried and the Celsius and Voyager and all those explosions. And right now, just to really put a date on this episode, we've got, we'll see in the future how this plays out, but we've got friend.tech going on right now. And then we've got the Bald token that was the first pump and dump scam on Base, literally day one of Base, and people are degening into, some crazy token. And obviously, those are the types of things that happen when you have a lack of ethics amongst certain actors in the space, and people who are just like, hey, it's the Wild West, I'm just going to do whatever I want. If people get wrecked, it's their own fault for putting their money in. And I mean,
but if you're going into the situation with that attitude, you're being kind of a jerk.
right.
That's the extractive
You've
perspective.
put some hay over the trap, and you're like, well, if they walked into it.
Right. But in some cases, we do want to see regulation. Like, we want to make sure that stablecoins are backed. So there were some instances where it's like, yeah, okay, self-regulate, but also we do need some protection for
as
the
we
industry at
discussed in the
large.
episode, it's like wherever crypto is going to touch the real world, there needs to be regulation, and that's what it comes down to. And also, it's kind of like what can be regulated will be regulated.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's an unfortunate effect of living on the planet Earth.
Indeed. And actually, great point, great segue there. The takeaway from that episode was to keep an eye on these upcoming regulations that are coming down through global regulatory bodies. The G20 countries are deciding these things for everybody. The FATF, the Financial Stability Board, the Bank of International Settlements, all these organizations that were not elected individuals and citizens have no say. They are crafting regulations that will be handed down. So I just keep an eye out for that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Before that was our security episode. That was a fun one. That was a really good episode, I thought. We have a lot of great tips in there, ranging from general security, like if you're just going to be on the internet using email, basic web browsing, all that stuff, up to watch out for phishing, and then into the crypto space where we gave tips like have multiple wallets, use good hygiene with your passwords, keep your seed phrases safe, all that type of stuff. So a lot of great
2FA
suggestions
where possible.
Absolutely. It was an opportunity to highlight on that, like, with self-sovereignty comes self-responsibility. If we want to self-custody our assets, if we want to be the ones that have the sole control over it, all the safety falls to you as well.
Then watch your back, because it does get into the scams, and that's kind of why we did it in that order. But yeah, like, security is very important, and in a lot of ways, like, since a lot of these things are social hacks, like, in a way, if you think about it, the non-ethical and the, like, pump and dumps and the scams and the rug pulls and all those things are other types of security measures, in a sense. Like, you have to be on the lookout for projects that are insecure, like putting your money here, or getting in this Discord server and making friends here. These might not be your friends. Like,
you never know if everybody's allowed to be anonymous or pseudo-anonymous.
That's what's kind of like the thing with the pump and dump groups too, because I feel like, not to judge anybody, but if you join a pump and dump group thinking that you are going to be dumping on other people, you kind of get what you deserve when you end up being the dumped on. You know what I mean?
Like, this is that zero-sum game thing. If you are making money hand over fist off of some random pump, that money's coming from somewhere. Somebody is getting wrecked. So if you're looking for some good suggestions, check out that episode for sure. We also did a bonus episode. There was one that was kind of unplanned. We slipped in there about DAOs and collective ownership. This discussion was spawned by a Twitter space that was hosted by Meme Brains, and I think
that was actually the DAO pain points and pass forwards. The non-bonus episode.
Oh, I scrolled too far. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
That was DAO pain points and pass forward. So that was the Meme Brains article, and then there was a Bankless Publishing article discussing that further as well.
Right.
And our show that time was kind of reviewing that Bankless Publishing article and the discussions that came out of that Twitter space.
Yeah, it was kind of our takes. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of perspectives on that from across the space, not just ours, but we also gave our opinion on kind of where we felt were the biggest pain points for us in our DAO experience, and how we can move forward and adjust those for the future. Touched on things like sustainability, both financial sustainability and organizational sustainability. There's a social sustainability aspect to these things as well. Overcomplication of processes, instructions, onboarding, whatever the case might be, and then retention of people once they're here.
And this one was almost like a bonus peek forward into the Moloch episodes that we'll be going into, because that was one of the big things. We kind of realized all of all of our points in the pain points and the paths forward were, well, man, look at the Moloch traps we ran into, and how can we get out of them?
How do we get out of these? Yeah, exactly. So that'll be a fun one. I'm looking forward to that series because there's a lot of examples that we can draw from when Moloch gets involved.
Yeah.
But a lot of the key takeaways from that were proper compensation for contributors is going to be key. Proper labor pricing is going to be key, so it doesn't end up being like a global race to the bottom. There's just some important aspects of this workspace that we've defined that need to be maybe adjusted for optimization. And then before that was our DAOs and collective ownership episode. We talked about what DAOs were, how they function in the space, kind of gave some context to what collective ownership was. Had a couple of examples of creators that successfully launched their own brands and platforms in this shared creator space. It's a great way to bridge fans into community members. You can put with a DAO and with this collective ownership model, you can put a name to a face or a wallet address, and now you know which person is maybe engaging more or is interested in a particular niche of your art. So a lot of opportunities there if you're getting into collective projects.
Yeah, to really like get involved with your community and possibly even like hire within your community. If you're a project that's like looking for, community manager is one of the most common for NFTs or anything. Like community managers are always needed, but you could end up with a writing gig or a podcasting gig or anything from working, in a DAO or being part of an NFT project, and just, whether it's fun or work, you could end up getting good opportunities come out of that.
Right. And then before that episode, we had Decoding DeFi. This was a focus on financial independence for creators. We talked a little bit about the foundations of DeFi, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and how these two have paved the way for general decentralized finance. Tons of benefits for creators in this space: greater financial autonomy, higher yields, lower fees. There's a lot of things that you can do with DeFi that you can't do in TradFi. And unlocking that as a creator is only going to amplify both your revenue and your reach.
Yeah, and I remember kind of one thing that I was like going on with this episode in particular was, if you come in as an artist, maybe you're not necessarily using your crypto to pay the bills and survive. You're just doing it as a side thing to your other artistic endeavors. So you might already be selling paintings or merchandise or whatever, but then you get into NFTs and you're making a little bit of crypto. And instead of just instantly cashing that out to a bank and taking that out to dollars, you might be able to take that money and reinvest it using Aave or Compound or any Curve or any of these DeFi protocols, where you can then take your earned profits on NFTs and possibly turn it into even more of an investment than, just like dollars.
Earn some yield or borrow against it if you need to. You can access that locked liquidity.
Exactly. So instead of just needing to cash it out and put it right in the bank, it's like there's banks that you can put it in on the blockchain. There's smart contracts that will hold that money for you if you want to put it to work.
And one of the big suggestions too was, or one of the big points that we touched on, is the importance of L2s, these layer 2 networks. Ethereum can get gassy. Not everybody can or wants to spend ETH on mainnet gas fees, especially for high frequency things. So L2s are a huge deal. We talked a little bit about Polygon, a little bit about Arbitrum and Optimism. There's more, but these are good places to get started.
Yeah, those are the three we're the most familiar with. And also what we're seeing is, obviously Base just got released since we did that episode. So Base is out there, but also there's going to be more super chains spinning off of Polygon, the Polygon ZK EVM and Optimism. Arbitrum also has its thing they're doing. Then there's also like Cosmos and stuff like that too. And there's a lot of chains like CeeLo, for instance, is becoming an Ethereum layer 2 now. So we'll probably see a lot of L1s of the last cycle convert to being L2s this cycle.
That's bullish, ETH. That's like large projects recognizing, okay, Ethereum is the future of smart contracts, internet money, whatever the case might be. They're seeing the value in Ethereum and making sure that they're
Yep.
EVM compatible.
The next
Using
token
the
rush is
security.
going to be L2 tokens. You know, at last bull it was L1s, now it's L2s.
Yeah. Before that, zooming out again, basically touched on smart contracts. You can't have DeFi without smart contracts, right? So we touched on smart contracts, royalty management, and a lot of the ways that creators can improve their workflow, improve their everything by utilizing that smart contract feature. You know, you can maintain, gosh, we talked a little bit about copyright stuff, royalty management into perpetuity, because the smart contract is forever.
And also just the splits in the first sale, like in the original sale, even before royalties, having built-in splits and all that type of stuff. Like smart contracts are really where it's at. Like there is no creator economy in crypto without smart contracts.
Right. So that's how you're ensuring fair compensation, fair payment, fair, transparent transactions. Everything is. Was this you who told me one time contracts are for when?
Yeah, that was
going. Well, yeah, what's that quote? I don't want to butcher it.
Yeah, that was in one of the episodes. Contracts are for when everybody's upset. It's when everybody was friends at the beginning of the project, and now we're no longer happy. That's where the contract comes in. The contract gets to stipulate who actually stepped out of the agreement.
Right. So now we can have this all public, transparent, blockchain ready, and as long as you're holding up your end of the deal, everything is automated and taken care of.
And the thing is with blockchains, and I mean, obviously this doesn't avoid the real life parts of contracts and working things out. But the thing about blockchains and smart contracts is whatever you worked into the deal on the front end is what it is. So there's no changing it later. If you agreed to it and the split goes through that way, the split's going to go through that way. Nobody's going to be able to change that and say, oh, I deserved more. Well, this is what we agreed to. Or you deserve less. Well, this is what you wrote into the contract. And that's really powerful. And, one thing I think we did talk about in this episode, but I might as well just harp on it a second here. And that is that in a lot of ways, creators are still dependent on smart contracts that already exist, like OpenSea and Manifold and things like that. Like we're not actually able to write the contracts we want. And in some cases, the contracts we want don't yet exist. And so that's why you see a lot of NFT projects actually getting, code written for their project so it functions the way they want it to function, as opposed to just doing it out of the box, so to speak.
Right.
But hopefully more of these out-of-the-box features come, because this shouldn't be held out of the reach of people who don't know devs,
This is part of the UI and the UX experience that's always improving. We're not ready for normies yet. Normies,
and unless you're using, I'm a normie. What I mean? Well, in the case that I can't write my own NFT code. If I want to release music NFTs, I need help with that. I need Manifold or Decent or Riff,
that exists.
Lens. That's one reason I loved Lens so much, because oh wow, anything goes. It's an NFT right now. I don't have to and also because even with OpenSea. I mint an NFT on OpenSea, and now I got to take that OpenSea link and put it on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everywhere. And I'm expecting people to leave the platform to go to OpenSea to buy my NFT. And it's having that native purchase ability that you have with things like Lens and, any other social and Web3 things that are like that, where it's right there. Or even Fake Gotchis, for instance, where we have our own auction site and it goes right up there. I kind of feel like the public marketplace, it's like being at the mall. There's too much. So you're not going to find customers being on the shop at OpenSea. You know what I mean?
Good point. It's a good analogy too, especially with something like OpenSea or Rarible now that have thousands of collections. You're just inundated, don't even know where to start.
Right.
Could start with the top sales, whatever, but all that's going to improve, I think. And And bridging a little bit from that creator user experience, we also were talking in a previous episode about creator protections. While yes, we need to make sure that these platforms and dApps are usable for our normies, creators also need their protections in this space as well. A lot of this space was created through Web 2 forcing creators into their own freelancing and social, building their own social spheres. But creator protections are very important. We highlighted challenges creators face in, protecting intellectual property rights, more splits, and we touched further on this in the royalty episode, but maintaining fair compensation. I think we started talking about the self-sovereign identity and that individual owning your own identity.
Right.
Talked
and
about
your data and
exactly the importance of all that, the user control and the privacy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is still coming along. Like as far as the creator protections, like the contracts, the smart contracts are very like based around money, but we haven't yet touched the meat space where we're actually protecting IP and learning how smart contracts enable IP to be used. And that can actually open us up to a bigger thing, depending on how we're going to go into the future of IP. But if we were trying to integrate with the current system, then one thing would be like, how can NFTs ensure that creators get paid for plays and things like that? Like, could we turn, could a music NFT app, something like Riff or Ooh La La, become Spotify? And instead of like, it being this closed thing and we don't know what happens to the money in Spotify or the plays or whatever, it would be a thing where it's smart contracts. And if you listen to this music, the creator gets played. There's nobody in the middle having, being in the middle of that thing. And that's kind of what we're trying to escape between the Web 2, Web 3 bridge is, hey, we don't want Spotify deciding what we get paid. We want the smart contract to tell us from up front what we're getting paid.
You want to know from the beginning. You want to consent to it.
Right. And that's the creator protections. And in a lot of ways, the creator economy itself is not a creator protection because creators had greater protections when they were being hired by companies and given W-2s and retirement plans and health benefits. And the creator economy largely came out of companies saying, well, we're not going to hire writers anymore or designers or web designers or anybody that we just want to use freelance. We are going to 1099, deal with your own problems and fight over work. And that's the sad part about the creator economy is the struggle for work. And that's what turns it into a race to the bottom.
Need for protections. Highlighted a lot of them there. And then as part of that race to the bottom, ties into our next episode, cryptocurrency and global reach. Because we're a global community, we also have to be watching out for that labor race to the bottom, or they say like technology is deflationary. The more technology you get, the cheaper it gets to make the technology, and it's always decreasing in price.
Every layer of technology takes out a layer of workers and a layer of lawyers.
Yes, indeed. But interesting you say that, because we kind of talked about how crypto differs from traditional banking systems. And traditional banking systems are going to have those layers. They're going to have the lawyers. They're going to have all that. In cryptocurrency, it all just comes down to the code.
Right.
That code is your law. But because it's a global code, because it's a global audience, and because it's all transparent and auditable, we can use that to bridge between regions, bridge between countries. That can be a global platform of reach.
It's really easy
if you're a creator
to accept global payments, whether you're a creator, you're writing code, you're working for a community in a Discord server. It is really easy for somebody to send you Ether Bitcoin to your wallet and boom, you've been paid. And that money is worth what it's worth wherever you're at when you cash it out,
Right.
But in a lot of ways, it's also a great equalizer because it really, like, if you're from a poorer country and you're able to get into a market where you're working with people who make 10, 20, 100 times more than what you can make in your country for doing the same exact work, then that's really good. Like you can do the same jobs you would be getting and getting 100x the money because, we might be like with us, for instance, with AV, our AV prices are expected, to be paying like somewhere near a US wage. But if you are in, a country in Africa where your money's worth, it, I think like I was looking into some currency exchanges and like a dollar would be worth like $700 in their country kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it's worth so much more, just a few dollars. And so, yeah, if you can earn Bitcoin and you're able to, or Ethereum or whatever other token, and you're able to sell a small portion of that token, like you're actually like stacking wealth in that case. And it gives people access to wealth that they wouldn't have in their own countries,
Amplifies your purchasing power for the wage you're already receiving and the skills you're already using.
Exactly. And it's part of the reason that we don't see the adoption that we should in the US. Why? Because US citizens don't need it. They have good banks, they have credit cards, they have grocery stores that are close by, and they can use it's actually harder for an American to think about how to use cryptocurrency in their everyday life than it is for someone in another country where they already have a crap money system. And this cryptocurrency actually makes it way better.
Right. It gives you finally a tool to use, whereas there was none before.
In countries where you don't have PayPal and Stripe and things like that, because like PayPal won't do business with a lot of African countries, for instance. So if you are in a country that doesn't have PayPal, then cryptocurrency just skipped right over that. We don't need you. So yeah, that is part of the thing with this global cryptocurrency market is like, it is global, but in a lot of ways, I feel like the West is a little bit behind. I feel like your average American citizen is going to have trouble understanding how useful this is, while other struggling parts of the world are going to be like passing those people by because like you're not even here.
The technology is satisfying needs that express themselves more in other parts of the world. A lot of things like PayPal, we have the ability already in the US to send money instantly. You can use any number of platforms, but if you don't have a bank or access to even like a Western Union store to send a remittance through the TradFi system, crypto unlocks something that you didn't have any tools for before.
Right. And I think one thing totally with the payment systems, definitely. But with the work thing, for instance, you know how many US citizens could be working in crypto that don't understand how to work on the internet, or like they don't even understand you can work on the internet, and like they don't get it at all because they haven't needed it in any way. They haven't really struggled because they can go like find a brick and mortar job so close, and like they haven't needed to like expand their horizons in that way. That when I tell people what I do and what we do, like when I explain DAO work and crypto work to some people I know, they think I live on another planet. They're like, what do you mean? Like, they just
I've tried to explain it to my parents. It doesn't, like, they don't have any parallels to draw. They just don't get it.
Right.
I just tell them freelancing.
Yeah, I'm freelance. That's what I tell people. Mostly I just tell people, yeah, I freelance. Yeah.
So I guess to keep moving, because we have a couple of episodes still to review. To connect the dots there, though, is yes, we've got a global reach. Yes, we've got a global audience. But now we also have virtual experiences that can connect the dots in an almost physical way. You create a metaverse space where you can give a presentation or meet with a group of like-minded folks. You've created your own virtual country, essentially.
I mean, in a way, even this, because like the reason we use Restream, for instance, is because like we needed something that either of us can be in the studio together. You and I have never been in the same room together, and we're able to work on this software as if it's like the same room because you're looking at the same buttons I'm looking at.
This is our virtual meeting space.
It is. It's the office. Yeah, I was explaining to Shelly, like, I got to go meet CFI in the studio. And she's like, what is the studio? Like, We're in the studio right now.
So virtual spaces is going to be huge. Virtual events, virtual experiences, and virtual economies. You know, the more of these spaces and the more of these ecosystems we create, the more tokens, more tools, more everything that we're going to have, and it's all going to be virtual. So it's headed that way. You know, we've got VR, we've got AR, we've got ChatGPT is blowing people's minds. There's so many advancements that are coming on this in this like space.
Yeah, and to tie it to everything, part of it too with the virtual experiences is we're talking about like having concerts or film festivals or whatever, just being able to like watch a movie with your friends in the same virtual space, and beyond that being able to like show off your NFT avatars and being able to like trade things and get POAPs and other NFTs for showing up to events, and being able to like display those in your own virtual spaces, your own galleries, you know what I mean? Like things like spatial and man, I can't even think. There's a bunch of these gallery spaces. I think I don't know. Can't think of the other ones right now, but there's a bunch of these gallery spaces where you can put your NFTs on the wall, and you know what I mean? And like
we've played around in the Monoverse.
Oh, the Monoverse. That's a good one. Yeah.
Hanging out with Rizzle and the Whipped Crew. So.
Crypto Voxels, Decentraland, Sandbox. These are all places where like you can bring in all your NFTs and use them within the space and
build a portfolio, build yourself almost a physical, like a 3D resume.
Right.
So definitely a lot of opportunities there. And then of course you've got AI and automation, our episode before that, which is only going to amplify all these things. You get AI and automation, you got answering your question and pumping the answer out automatically. Like with these two tools, we are really going to see level ups, not only in the creator economy space, but I mean like across the economy, across the global economy.
Yeah, I mean AI, like that episode in general, like I feel like it was so long ago, and there's been so many advancements even just since then.
Since then, it was like weekly updates. It feels like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, having AI going into some of these metaverses and in these games, having like AI that can actually interact with you, it's gonna be totally different than an NPC, because you know what I mean? Like
NPCs are as of now programmed to do specific things, but NPCs equipped with AI are programmed to do like general things.
Right. Well, it may have like specific goals, but it will have like its own ways of getting around it. Yeah.
Exactly. It'll be very immersive, very reactionary to like the user's experience.
Right. It'll make your choices in games even more important, because you don't want to like set the thing off in any way and like
right. Yeah, you can have effects that trickle down. And we've seen games like this that do this, where you get in a trade, and if it's a successful trade, it increases your charisma score or whatever the case might be. We've seen games kind of touch on that, but AI is going to be a whole different level of immersion.
And of course, we used AI in some of our early episodes. We worked on using AI for scripts and research.
Everything we could. Yeah. I mean, generally we started from the very beginning, titles, topics to cover, subtopics, like, okay, we're going to talk about this topic. What's a good outline? Summaries, scripts, everything. I mean, we've even used, even Restream Studio is a little bit of this automation, because it's doing all the encoding for us. It's syncing up our audio and video. It's creating one handy output file.
I've been mastering all of the audio with AI mastering. So like
every tool we can find, we like to try it out.
So yeah, we certainly put it to use in this series. So we'll get to that a little bit later in part of the retro part of this, but
I guess let's real quick touch on the last two episodes, or the first two episodes. The democratization of content creation and collaborations and partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, the democratization is really kind of all of it. Like these tools are accessible to anyone and everyone. We've talked about the global reach and how like YouTube and Twitter and all of these things are free. And even like our studio, for instance, isn't free, but there's a free version that gives you a lot of the tools, gives you a chance to get in there and learn. And, I feel like it's easier than it's ever been to get involved in anything because the technology barrier is so low that anything you want to do, you can find some way to do it. Maybe you can't get the Adobe Cloud thing, but you can find DaVinci Resolve for free and learn on that until you can get your Adobe Cloud. And maybe, same like Adobe makes you pay for everything and they've got everything, but you could use Blender if you want to do 3D stuff. That's free. You can learn. Is Unity free?
Unity's free.
Yeah. So like, there's so many of these things out there that are free tools that you can learn on, and maybe you need to work your way up and maybe you eventually need to buy tools, but being able to start with
it's never been easier. Yeah, it's never been more accessible for sure.
Right. And then being able to
in a
publish.
situation, yeah, if you're in a situation where you're stuck and you feel like you've reached a barrier to entry, you just open up a new tab in GPT and get past that step and go back to what you were doing. It's like,
and the only thing that hasn't been democratized is the access to our capital. Mm-hmm. Like, we have the access to put our work out there, but our work is being used to extract from us. Like, we're not getting the ad revenue that we deserve. We're not getting, the type of reach we deserve with the algorithms because they want to like bump some stuff and put other stuff down. And that part has not been democratized, but the ability to get in there and start creating, it's lower than ever.
Absolutely. And tying that to collaborations and partnerships, not only do you have the tools and access to learning skills that are necessary, there are so many opportunities for collaborating with other artists, larger groups. Even this show here, this episode is part of a project that we collaborated with Bankless DAO on to create. So there's just a lot of ways to get started if you're stuck.
Right. Or even us as from A to Z as a show, like the fact that we have a podcast with two people who've never met, like same thing with Bankless HQ, like they began online and hadn't met each other. So like the internet makes it to where you're not just looking at your circle of friends and saying, oh, who's going to be in my band? Who can I start a podcast with? Who can I start a business with? You have the entire internet to open up to and say, all right, now who's in my band? Who's in my podcast? Right. Who's in my business? Like the whole world is suddenly a collaborator potentially. And it just takes like meeting people on Instagram or Twitter or whatever you're doing, and forming those collaborations, partnerships, and then sponsorships and deals and all the other comes out of it,
That's what comes, exactly. That's what comes from it long term. But the thing that we were focusing on in this episode was if you're going to get into a collaboration or a partnership with someone or a group, make sure that you're communicating well and make sure that you're aligned. You're both kind of looking for the same thing, and it's a good fit. You'll know sometimes it's not a good fit, but if you find that right collaboration, look, I think we got a good thing here. We can get a lot done. We can go far.
Right. So, absolutely.
That being said, we've got a retrospective to talk about how well we actually did do. You know what I mean? we can go over all the things we did. Did we do it well? So that brings us here to segment 2. We're going to do a little bit of review. How did
introspection?
What things went well? Introspective, retrospective. Yes. What did we do well? What didn't we do well? What might have been where were there opportunities where we could have done better? And then finally, like, what are we thinking about long term? What possibilities does this open up? What questions are we left with? A little bit of that. So
cool.
Let's start with scoping the project first. Let's define kind of what we had set out from the beginning. This was initially a partnership project with the AV Guild with the intent to revitalize some of the energy and activity in the Guild, to onboard some more audiovisual talent that we could use later with other projects or other collaborations, and to kind of, for lack of a better word, like refill the AV talent pool at Bankless DAO. We wanted a podcast that anybody could get involved in if there was something that you wanted to learn how to do. We provided this project, this whole show, as a hands-on opportunity. That's the way I learn best. It's the way a lot of people learn best. But this was our opportunity to give folks in Bankless DAO like a sandbox that they could play in themselves. And if they're looking to start a podcast, maybe you can learn how to use the studio, or you can learn how to use DaVinci Resolve. That was our initial scope. We wanted to both provide the project, or provide the podcast, and then provide the sandbox for others to learn. We did have a couple people take us up on the offer. There were a couple new members who joined the guild who helped us create shorts, worked on some like subtitles for those shorts, and some of the post-editing stuff. We were able to share the studio experience too. We had a couple times where people came by and we were shooting our episode live, and they were just hanging out backstage. So that was kind of fun. I think a lot of that exposure stuff went well.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything in the scope? Is there any like blanks that you want to fill in there?
No, I think that was it. I think the main scope of the project was to try to revitalize, get people inspired, get people active, give people things to do. We thought we would have a lot of bounties and a lot of like activity. And part of it too was the inspiration part of it. We really were hoping for more people to just see what we were doing and jump in and say, "Oh, I want to do this with y'all," or "I have my own idea I'd like to try." And that's really where I think our goal was. That I don't think happened. I mean, we did get people involved, but it wasn't an extended, involvement. People really didn't get that involved. We had some good clips cut out of it by some members, and we did have other people start to get inspired and start to spin up their own proposals for projects. We did see that happening.
That's true.
I don't think any of those projects took off, but at least we did see activities start to spin up out of that. Yeah, so I think overall in that way, it didn't do what we intended it to do.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of good value out of it. And obviously we've finished the series and it's all been coherent, but I don't think from the partnership perspective, from that collaboration project perspective, I would agree. I don't think we got exactly what we had hoped out of it.
Right. Now, what I am hoping that we got out of it, and I think we got this out of it, and time will tell as we're releasing these, but I think this content is good evergreen content, and it is good for people coming in for the first time to kind of see some of this and see the explanation of all these things together. I think that you don't see people really tying it all together with everything about the internet and crypto and AI and all these things. And I think our series really came at it hey, there's a type of person who needs all of these things, and it's called the creator.
and not only do you need it, here's how you use it, and here's how you can connect the dots, and here's kind of a roadmap for the ecosystem.
Right. And it just so happens that in this global future, everyone is a creator. We're all creating something. It's not just for artists. It's not just, this is the global way of work. We're going to see more asynchronous work and more global companies being formed, more DAOs, and less of a reliance on brick and mortar buildings and people knowing each other and being forced to eat lunch together and all these things.
Being forced. Yes.
So yeah, I think we will still see some good come out of this. And I think more than anything, it's inspired us to continue making content for the DAO. We really want to see the DAO YouTube channel grow, and we want to see good content coming out like this. So I think that that's going to be a good knockoff effect that we'll see as these episodes are being released for the DAO. And then also as we start our next series for the DAO. And we'll see how that goes, as that series currently does not have funding, and we will have to see whether or not we can get funding for it, or possible sponsorships, or the direction of that. And so, a lot of potential there. Anything else I should touch on that, or do we have more? What's the next part of the...
I think another thing that we might have been able to do better is from the beginning, maybe a little bit more outward momentum, a little bit more like marketing, advertising, trying to
Yeah,
draw people in. I think we relied on people seeing this information and going, "Oh, I want to get involved." Where
right.
we might have been better off trying to pull some of that interest,
And I
being
would
more about.
say, yeah, I put it out a few places. I was like in the very beginning trying to like say a lot about it, and I didn't get much feedback, and it just felt like it wasn't getting the traction. And I think that kind of made me give up a little. And so
It
maybe,
hurt us a bit because I
yeah,
felt it too, and I think we knew that it was affecting a little bit of our motivation for the project. But to a certain extent, that is due to the timing too. We're in the bear market. We've seen a lot of
middle
people
of
not only
summer.
leave the people are out camping, they're doing their vacation, right? And of course, this is all U.S. centric. I understand hemispheres how they work. That's a separate thing. But essentially, we're at the bottom here. We've got low interest crypto wide. The whole space has kind of seen an exodus of people, time, attention. So we're working with what we've got here in the DAO at the bottom of the bear. And
Right. And also
maybe
in
we could have
crypto
timed it better.
Twitter and YouTube and everywhere else. It was just like, um, not a lot of attention on this space. And even more so, I feel like there's not a lot of creator economy podcasts. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's really not that many of them. I mean,
There's a
maybe
lot
there,
of creators doing
yeah,
podcasts, but there's not a lot of creators that are doing a podcast focused on the creator economy of people doing podcasts.
exactly.
For lack of
So
better
I
words.
think it's also a niche within a niche. It's like crypto creator economy. It's very like down the rabbit hole. But we'll see how it goes when we release them on the DAO YouTube. And um, we will have to do a better job on the marketing this time around and getting announcements out and working with the marketing guild on that. And I think
We've already
another
got a lot of good
thing
ideas.
Another good thing I think we learned from this was that we used a lot of AI and scripting, and that was our first time using scripts at all. And I really think that we learned that we enjoy this
Not
type
to.
of conversation better.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
we're
The script
better.
was really helpful for prep. We knew everything that was going to be covered. We know what order to cover it in. But the
And
way that you and I have these dialogues, it just becomes more natural, more organic when we have that
exactly,
flexibility
because
to
we
expand.
didn't let AI write our scripts. We went back and like we wrote forms, and then we went back and
Yes.
edited our own paragraphs hand by hand. Like he wrote his words, I wrote my words. But at the end of the day, it was still this like cage that we were locked into, and it was almost like hard to get an anecdote in because you could tell the difference between the script and the
Yes.
anecdote very clearly. At least in my opinion,
And
I felt it. But
I did too, for sure, for sure. And then that transition back,
yeah.
going from the script to here's a quick aside, and then how does that tie into the next sentence? Oh no. That was a great analogy, feeling trapped in a cage.
Yeah.
But for some content, might work great. And I think if I were creating solo content, or if one was creating solo content, that full script might work really well.
Yeah.
But for
And
this, we learned, hey, it's a great tool, but we prefer something different.
I had tried to do scripting before on a show I did called NF Thesis. And on that show, I would do scripts and I would essentially I hand wrote them actually. I would handwrite my scripts and prop up a notebook next to the camera.
Was this
And
like Web 1?
no, this was like 21. This is like not that long ago I was
No, I'm
doing
just giving
this.
you crap.
So, but no, like I think that because of also like having that format and not pivoting quick enough, we were getting drawn out. We were like, oh, I really don't want to do
It was
this. Like,
exhausting. Yeah, we just didn't want to shoot that next episode because it felt like a chore rather than an experience.
right. And so I think getting into it this way has been, getting back to our like conversational roots has been a little bit better. I think we've,
Agreed.
it might be a little harder to stay on point sometimes, especially for me, because you want to get off into the weeds on some story and some side note. But you know what?
But it's not completely freestyle. We do have a structure. Like we still prep show notes and we have an outline of the things that we want to talk about and kind of the order. But yeah, it gives us that freedom.
Exactly. So I think overall, we did learn a lot, and I don't regret doing this series at all. I think we did a
Oh no.
great 101, and I think it's really like made me feel better about what we do, where our strengths lie, where our weaknesses lie, and also where our strengths and weaknesses in compared to each other, like what you're good at and what I'm good at, and knowing like
we are very different. It ends
how
up
we
working
can
out
prop
great.
each other up, like, you know.
Yeah, that's plugging us again here, but tying back into that partnerships and collaborations, you're not going to get necessarily this kind of like chemistry in every partnership. You know, you really have to be on point. You really have to ask questions up front. If you're going to start a podcast like this, it's a great thing. It's a great recommendation, I suppose, to like know the person you're going to be podcasting with. Know what their kind of their beliefs are, what their attitudes are, what, like you said, what their strengths and weaknesses are. You're great with audio. I seem to be a little bit more focused on video. Like, find somebody that works well with you, both on the project and the content.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're a lot more like organized, and I'm a lot more like, let's just hit record and go.
I can't do it. I gotta have a Notion notes. I gotta have something to work from, you know.
And I mean, that's good for me because like it is good.
Otherwise,
like,
it'd be 3 hours of just
forever,
random zombie thoughts.
I can look down and be like, oh yeah, we have a next bullet point to get to.
Oh, we were here for something. Yes, exactly.
And oftentimes I am looking back and going, all right, where are we going, Z-Fi? Like we're off in the field now because of my story. Where the hell are we? All right, turn left.
Yep. So come on back to our point. We're gonna transition. Yeah. But that's all part of, you know, knowing your collaboration. So
yep. Now we just need the feedback from the audience to tell us what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, we are thinking, oh yeah, we're great, everything's fine, we're getting along, and the audience is like, these two clowns, I don't know about that. No, but I think, like you said, this was a great experience. I don't at all regret doing this series. This was a good one. I'm kind of curious what the future holds. You know, I know we've got our Moloch series, and I don't think either of us are ready to stop podcasting.
No, so I'm ready to keep going. And I mean, I want to be doing this. I'm down for it. And I'm going to permissionless in a couple weeks and meeting with a bunch of podcasters there. And that's essentially all permissionless is, right? It's a bunch of podcasters and not financial advisors, not giving each other financial advice on podcasts.
Yes. Hey, it'll be a blast. It'll be a great networking experience. You might get some good alpha. I gotta go next year. I should have went this year, but
oh man, it's gonna be fun. So what else in the retro? What else we gotta close? What are we closing on? We're getting close to our
I'd like to get some feedback. Honestly, I know we're not going to get it live here, but I'd like to close on audience members. For those of you who've been following along with the series,
hell yeah.
Even if you've been following along with our previous series, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to see more of? How can we be more helpful to you as podcast hosts? Any of this information, all this information is helpful. So if you've been watching our stuff and you've got thoughts, spill the tea.
Hit us in the comments, hit us in the DMs on Twitter and Lens. And then another big question I would say is like, what other Web3 tools should we be using to get out there? Like we're using Lens
what have
mostly.
We missed?
From A to Z only exists on Lens. We don't have a Twitter and any of that other stuff. We exist on Lens only. Personally, we exist other places. But so we should think about like what is the future of podcasting in Web3 and where should we be going as a show in the technology, not just in the content, you know? But yeah, the content too, because we're doing our Moloch series next. And then, maybe there's more creator economy specific stuff people want to get into. Maybe we need to do something specifically on the music industry and how that relates to Web 2 and Web 3, and maybe the film industry, or maybe maybe there's specific.
Maybe we need to drop a token or a metaverse.
Right. Who knows? Maybe we need to start Fats GPT.
What Fats do?
Oh man. So yeah, it's been fun doing this creator economy series, and we will see you in the next series, which is our Moloch series. And hopefully you're watching this on Lens, and hopefully you're watching it on the Bankless DAO YouTube. go collect these episodes where 18% goes to the Bankless DAO, 2% goes to Lynn's Tube, and the rest goes to the guys you're looking at.
That's right.
We'll see you again soon, friends. Thanks for the support, and peace out.